Ladies and gentlemen, yesterday's anniversary countdown login gave us a Mega Tier 2 ticket, and the new event quest allows you to exchange tokens for another Mega Tier 2 ticket. So with players being able to easily get 2 free Mega Tier 2 tickets right now, in addition to the monthly Mega Tier 2 ticket that you can get if you exchange those tokens, I decided it's high time to remake and update the Mega Tier 2 guide, and we're going to do it in the form of, you guessed it, a tier list. So let's bop right into it here, folks. I haven't used, or it's not an exclusive ranking, or sorry, it's not an exclusive ranking. It doesn't rank every single character that you should consider using a Mega Tier 2 ticket on. So it's not all encompassing. That's what I should have said instead of exclusive. However, the reason why I didn't include every character here is because there's a lot of characters that, while they're rare, they're not very good. And so I'll just use certain characters like Mystique as a proxy for all of the crystal characters. You know, there's Iceman, yada yada yada, so Sabretooth, so on and so forth. But really right now, Mystique is the only crystal character besides Blue Dragon and maybe Emma Frost that has considerable value, okay? So that there, I'll mention that each one that it matters to and it pertains to for that specific category. But I wanted to do that this way I can actually talk about the characters instead of having to just like rapid fire through all of them. But yeah, let's make the tiers here, the brackets first. The first one is pretty straightforward. It's called meta. People will have a little bit of a disagreement on what that means exactly, but yeah. And then we got PvP, PvE, support, and then rework, which is pretty straightforward. Okay. So let's start off with rework. These are characters that I don't think are really good enough right now to use a Mega Tier 2 ticket on. I'll explain why as I go through, but also the fact that if they got a rework, they could be very, very strong. Now, with the Eternals, it's not really a big secret. Now, you do need to get them to Tier 2 to finish their quests, particularly for Makari and Gilgamesh, so that you can unlock Thena. So the value there is nice if you're just looking at it from a collection standpoint of view. You get your Tier 2 Makari, you get your Tier 2 Gilgamesh, and then you can start working on your, Thena. However, yeah, they're not really in the meta right now for PvE or PvP. No real chance there. Maybe like some niche stuff for Gilgamesh for Alliance Conquest, but you need Cersei for that. You need high builds for that. It's not really going to work. Same thing goes for Juggernaut. As cool as his uniform was, he kind of fell off already. You need his artifact. You need a max build, and even then, he's not really doing much. And then I wanted to put here Victorious. We have overlap here with Victorious, Phyla-Vell, and Colossus. They're all strikers in the Epic Quest, but I wanted to mention Victorious because she's a striker for an Epic Quest, but she's also a support type who has just been neglected for a really long time. Now, she could, very well keep getting neglected. She's been in the game since 2019, but maybe she finally gets a uniform and she becomes more useful than that. So again, it's just a very low priority, but something to consider. Electro's at the top of this list. Electro's probably the best character on this rework. He's honestly good enough to maybe be a little bit more because he has a very strong leadership for the Sinister Six. Very, very strong leadership. And then I believe he has a support passive. He might or may not have like a lightning damage or elemental damage support passive. So he's not bad. Honestly, he's not bad. But at this point, I feel like, yeah, he kind of needs a rework. So he's really on the cusp of either being here at the bottom or here. But sort of makes sense. We'll take it from there. Moving up to PvP, Echo. We don't have the image yet for her newest uniform, but just assume that it's the newest uniform. It actually looks a lot nicer than this icon, but yeah, she's probably going to be useful for PvP. Obviously, she's useful as a support / leadership for speed types, so you can sort of flip-flop her in either category. But I'll just put her in PvP for now. But seeing as she is a premium character, that is an issue that that the Mega Tier 2 ticket solves. Rachel's pretty interesting because, yeah, she's a PvP threat. You absolutely need her artifact, but I think a lot of people are going to be considering Rachel once they unlock her through the Dimension missions, right? Because it allows them to get Madeline. So that's something to consider. I wouldn't really go down that route unless you're able to get one or both of their artifacts, because both Madeline and Rachel really rely on their artifacts. But if you really like the character for whatever reason, she's not bad. She's certainly useful in certain PvP scenarios. And she also has, like I said, that value for the Epic Quest to help you unlock Madeline, which is nice. So, that's there. But yeah, I don't rank her too highly outside of that because it's a pretty expensive price to pay, and it's a very, very difficult character to obtain. But then again, if you finally hit the jackpot on Rachel, aren't you going to tier 2 her? Emma, like I said, with Mystique and Blue Dragon, represents the Crystal Wall characters. Emma slidden out of PvP. She's not really relevant in PvP these days. You also need her artifact, so much like Rachel, that's the situation. But, you know, during the anniversary, she's discounted. You really want to build up Emma. Obviously, she's a great target for a Mega Tier 2 because the Mega Tier 2 then saves you a bunch of crystals, right? You're just basically exchanging crystals for the Mega Tier 2 there. Not a bad idea at all. Mr. Sinister, similarly with the other two characters that I mentioned so far, needs his artifact to have any relevance whatsoever in PvP. Even then, not really relevant, probably even weaker than Emma, but he is a premium character. He's a, you know, X-Gene sub only character, so if you happen to get your hands on him and you want to take him all the way, if you've been watching X-Men 97, spoilers for episode like 3 or 4, you know, obviously he plays a role there. That could be something that you want to you know, explore. Then we come to Magic here. This is a seasonal uniform, so please be careful. Also needs her artifact to really survive. I know I'm repeating myself a lot, but it begs repeating. But yeah, again, she's a premium character, so if you get your hands on her and you want to take her all the way, that saves you a bio sub, it saves you an X-Gene sub, you know, and you can sort of keep trucking along there. Quendel Vaughn, I believe also premium. Yeah. Doesn't need his artifact, although it's a support artifact. Weaker, I would say, than these guys here, and really only ties together with an Annihilators team. So unless you have Annihilators ready to go, and you're looking at something like Alliance Conquest, like he's very, very low. He almost just deserves to rework. Okay, let's be honest here. He's not very good. And then we're going to round out the list with Wenwu and Kahori. Same sort of issue here. I mean, they gave away Kahori for free, but if you didn't get her, she's now premium. Same thing goes for Wenwu. You know, limited support value, limited PvP value, but there is something there. So, you know, it is worth mentioning. And, you know, Kahori definitely performs better with her artifact because of the dodge. Wenwu, not so much. You don't need to worry too much about that. But yeah, very, very low value here after you cross Magic. So just keep that, bear that in mind. And in general, I think the value of the Mega Tier 2 ticket, the way I've designed this tier list, it goes up from tier to tier. Like, this is obviously the lowest tier of value. I think this is the second lowest tier of value. And then this is obviously, these are the two best tiers of value for the Mega Tier 2 ticket. For PvE, it's pretty straightforward and it's pretty short. I'm just going to mention two characters here because most of, if not all of the meta characters for the Mega Tier 2 ticket are PvE. Right? They're not really PvP. Or there's maybe just like one or two. But for PvE, yeah, there's not really a lot of good options that aren't meta. Professor X is certainly one because of how difficult he is to obtain through dimension missions like Rachel these days if you didn't get him from the Danger Room. But Professor X is not that great. He has low survivability, low defense. He has a VPAD skill, which is nice, and he's got some healing, but not the easiest to play or to pilot. And he is not the best either, right? Having been replaced by Cable, etc., and that sort of thing. And then Thane is much more recent, although he can only go to tier 3, so he doesn't have the ability to go to tier 4 like Professor X, so he's limited. He has a lower ceiling. He's pretty strong for a character that only goes to tier 3 with one uniform, and doesn't require a heavy investment because you don't need his artifact or something like that. But yeah, I'd say like limited scope, right? This is a bit of a recency bias ranking. Some people would argue that he deserves to be down here, but just keep that in mind. It's like a recency bias thing. I'm not saying he's better than Echo, okay? I'm just saying for PvE only. Then we come to support. I think for sure, okay, if I'm going to be honest here, for sure, you should try to Mega Tier 2 every single character in the top 2 rankings, tiers, before you even consider anyone else down here, okay? Because the next 2 rankings are just so insanely valuable. It's off the charts, all right? So first 2 we have our Valkyrie and Ghost Panther. You can obtain them both through Dimension missions. I've been saying Dimension missions a lot. Just to be clear here, for Professor X and Rachel Summers, you have to get it from the 8th Dimension mission acquisition reward, which is a blue chest that opens and can give you random X-Gene bios. It can give you Colossus, it can give you Gambit, it can give you, some crappy character, but then it can give you Professor X or Rachel. Now, for Valkyrie and Ghost Panther, as well as like Carnage and some other characters on this list, Ironheart, I believe, and Enchantress, you get them through just regularly playing Dimension missions. You can clear ticket, but when you're getting those when you're getting those lines of rewards from Dimension missions, there in the Dimension mission rewards, you'll have biometrics, and those biometrics can be for Valkyrie, can be for Ghost Panther. So these characters are actually pretty easy to unlock. which is why then, unlocking them using a Mega Tier 2 ticket, it's quite nice value, because then you can immediately throw them into the fire, start getting that value as a support, and then start building them up towards Transcendence, Tier 3, whatever the case may be. So yeah, very, very strong value here. I'm going to mention White Fox because she has very strong value as a support, even though she's not a Dimension Mission character. She is a Heroic Quest character. So I'm going to use White Fox as a proxy for all of the other Heroic Quest characters that you might be thinking about, especially Wave. Heroic Quest characters cost a lot less now because it's only 750 bios, 750 crystals, but you get the same number of bios, but they reduce the number of bios you need to use for gears. So I believe if you use like a 5 and a 6-star ticket, you can avoid using a Mega Tier 2 ticket and still get these characters to Tier 2, which is when their value really starts to shine as supports. But keep that in mind that if you don't have those rank up tickets, then yeah, Mega Tier 2 ticket is obviously much more attractive, but it's not necessary anymore. So I hesitate to put her on this list, as I just explained, but I still think it's worth mentioning. Nick Fury, again, like Valkyrie and Ghost Panther and Enchantress, I believe, can also be gotten from Dimension Mission Shifter rewards. Maybe not. Maybe he can't. He's premium either way, if not. So yeah, but very, very strong now, especially since he can go to Tier 3. So and he doesn't need his uniform. I'm using his uniform icon, but he doesn't need it for the support. Enchantress does, Ghost Panther doesn't, and then Valkyrie does. But Valkyrie, I think, still has a support with no uniform. It's not as good, but it's still there. Riri Williams, another good one. Ironheart absolutely needs the uniform, unlike Nick Fury and the rest there. Absolutely needs the uniform for her support, but it is quite strong. A lot of people forget because her leadership is blast only. They think, oh, like her passive is blast only. It's not. Her passive is for all allies, and it's boss damage and ignore dodge. So it's very similar to Valkyrie's. She doesn't have the artifact to combo that with, but she is still a very, very strong, and in my opinion, she's an underrated support. M'Baku and Dazzler are next. They're Tier 2 only, so there is a bit of a drop-off here in terms of the overall value because you can't bring them into GBR Dormammu. You can't bring them into World Boss Legend. But they are still notable since they're useful for ABX ABL, and particular ABL for Dazzler. Not so much for... Well, ABX if you have Magneto, I would say. But M'Baku actually gets a lot more work because of all those specific combat days where he can double as an insane lead and support. So yeah, very, very strong there, but just a bit niche, so just keep that in mind. Agent Venom, obviously an amazing support we've discovered for PvP for symbiotes, and now with Silver Surfer and possibly Null on the horizon, his value just continues to rise and continues to duplicate. So you could argue that he deserves to be a little bit further here. Doesn't really have much value outside of PvP, but I think he is a bit of an underrated PvP gem. However, in order to shine with maximum effort here, he's going to need his artifact, but he's still pretty good. You just need the new uniform. You need to Tier 2 him. It can be a bit of a process there. Phyla-Vell, much like Dazzler and M'Baku, Tier 2 only, and can only be used really in ABX and ABL, few days here and there. But yeah, still pretty useful in that regard as a support. But yeah, can't be used in World Boss Legend, can't be used in GBR Dormammu. Also a striker, also an Epic Quest striker like Victorious and Colossus and stuff. So just keep in mind how difficult they are to get, and then whether you want to use that to your advantage as a support with a Mega Tier 2. Abomination, he's technically a support. These days, he's only really used as a leadership for a couple of days of ABX ABL where you can't use M'Baku because he's a combat villain. But unfortunately, he's obtained through the same ways as Professor X and Rachel. So yeah, he is very painful and annoying to obtain, which I think makes sense to then want to Tier 2, Mega Tier 2, because you're like, man, I've been grinding this shit forever. I finally unlocked my 1-star Abomination. I actually want to make use of him on my account. Let's Mega Tier 2 ticket him. It makes sense, but again, make sure you get most of these before you move down to Abomination, because as rare as he is, right, just like as rare as Professor X is, not that useful, not that strong, not that useful. And then rounding out the list, we have Sunbird. It's kind of unfair. Like Sunbird should probably be a little bit higher, but the issue with Sunbird here is he's a very strong support for the Warriors of the Sky for PvP, but the Warriors of the Sky for PvP are just non-existent. They're just not good anymore. So unless you have a fully built Warriors of the Sky team, I'm talking Tier 4 Blue Dragon, which we'll talk about in a second, Tier 4 Shadow Shell, right? Unless you already have that and you have them stacked for PvP, he has basically zero relevance in the game. Like zero, not even like negative relevance, because he's terrible. He's terrible in PvP, he's terrible in PvE. He's really only his support ability and nothing else. So it's a very, very, very conditional support ability. It's very strong, but very conditional. And also these days it's just not that impactful because, like I said, Blue Dragon can't really hold her own, and Shadow Shell didn't bring enough to the PvP landscape for the Warriors of the Sky, so they are just fading into obscurity once more. Speaking of the Warriors of the Sky, I'm going to put Blue Dragon up here. I know some people are going to hate on me. She's not technically meta, as I just explained, because the Warriors of the Sky are fading into obscurity, but she's still very strong. She's still very strong if you get her to tier 4. If you want to build her up, a Mega Tier 2 ticket makes sense because you save the crystals. She's not exactly meta, so you could put her here, but I just wanted to differentiate here because I think she has more value than Professor X at tier 4. Yeah, so for what that's worth, it is what it is. We also have Luna. We're just going to put her at the top here of meta. You need her seasonal uniform. She's much less valuable. Still meta, but less valuable without the uniform. I mean, you might even argue that she's here without the seasonal uniform. So just keep that in mind, but it's worth explaining. Mystique, like Blue Dragon, like Emma, crystal wall character, so you do save some crystals by exchanging the Mega Tier 2 for her, and she is meta at Tier 4 for ABX, and she's pretty strong. You can take her into different content. You can take her into Black Swan World Boss Legend Plus because she's a support. So I'd say she has a lot of value. I mean, even if she wasn't here, she would be somewhere around here as a support, so I still think it's worth mentioning. Namor, although he's been replaced for ABX ABL by Dr. Octopus quite heavily, like he's been erased, he's still really good. He's still really good. He can play double duty for you if you don't want to invest in or don't have Dr. Octopus, because you can give him a judgment and he still scores well in ABX ABL, but then he's a monster in World Boss and stuff like that. So yeah, I still think it's worth mentioning. He's a premium character, so using a Mega Tier 2 ticket on him is never a waste. Doesn't need his artifact to be useful. It's helpful, but it's not needed. He's nice. Carnage here, still a bit of a PvP threat. I wouldn't say he has, completely been sunsetted. So yeah, definitely needs his artifact, but another character to consider. I think you can unlock him from Dimension missions as well as Valkyrie and Ghost Panther and the rest. So yeah, pretty accessible. And then from there, it's just getting the uniform, Mega Tier 2ing, and then working your way up to Tier 4. I wouldn't really use it on him if he wasn't going to Tier 4, though. Yeah, he kind of needs the Tier 4. And then we have Colossus, same sort of thing. Epic Quest, Striker, so it's very difficult to get bios for. It's very slow. I would consider using a Mega Tier 2 on him as a support. His value is rising again with the introduction of really strong PvP metas like Thanos and Silver Surfer. They can make use of a support character much more, and especially for lower-end accounts who cannot afford to run, triple Tier 4 PvP teams, Thanos, Silver Surfer, Jean, whatever, Adam, Wolverine. Colossus does represent a lot of value in a much more affordable package. And then, yeah, I didn't rank them earlier, but Polaris, obviously, she's an excellent support. She's a premium character. She's also an excellent lead for mutants, so I would sort of rank her somewhere around here. Very nice. And then Satana. Satana's not fully premium, but she is a very, very strong support now for elemental damage characters, so I would put her somewhere around here. You can get her with sort of like striker bios in the Doctor Strange Epic Quest. It's very, very slow. You get like 3-4 bios a day, or maybe you can get up to 10 now a day, but it's still very, very slow. So I would say she is an option, but she needs the seasonal uniform. She's nowhere near relevant without the seasonal uniform, so just keep that in mind. Asterisk there on the value. But yeah, that's the list for all the characters that I think you should consider for a Mega Tier 2 ticket. Anyways, hit me up in the comments down below. Let me know what you think. Thank you so much for watching. Smash the like button if you enjoy the content, and I will see you. Go get your Mega Tier 2 ticket, baby. I will see you in the next one. Take care.